The library janitor shamed by police in public, but his military record made the whole department bow. They called him just the janitor, until the day they handcuffed him in front of the kids. What the police didn't know was that they had just shackled a decorated war hero. Thomas Elridge had been cleaning the marble floors of the Crestwood Public Library for 19 years. Every Monday to Saturday, he arrived at 6 a.m. sharp, keys jangling at his hip, the scent of old paper and floor polish already in the air. He didn't speak much, and few people ever asked about the man behind the mop. His skin was worn like dark leather from years under sun and steel, his back slightly hunched from time and silence. To the staff, he was a shadow in the margins. To the neighborhood kids, a gentle nod and a faint smile in the hallway. Then came Tuesday, the day everything unraveled. The new library policy had just taken effect, mandatory ID checks for all employees, initiated after a minor theft incident. Thomas didn't mind. He always wore his ID badge, clipped neatly above his heart. But that morning, someone claimed they had seen a suspicious man entering through the rear supply Duran anonymous tip, likely made in haste or with malice. 2 patrol cars pulled up within minutes. Sirens off, but lights still flashing. Inside the library, the children from Roosevelt Elementary were huddled on rugs during story time. Miss Valerie, the librarian, was mid-sentence when the front doors swung open and 2 uniformed officers strode in. "There's been a report," one of them said. "We need to speak to the maintenance staff." Valerie blinked, confused. "You mean Mr. Elridge? Is he in the building now?" "He's waxing the west wing," she replied, pointing down the hallway. They didn't thank her. They didn't walk calmly. They marched fast, loud, purposeful boots striking the tile like gunfire. Took less than a minute to find him. He had just set the waxer aside and was wiping down the bulletin board, adjusting the edge of a flyer for a summer book club. "Sir," the taller officer barked, hand already near his holster. "Step away from the wall." Thomas turned slowly, confused. "Hands where we can see them." The hallway was quiet at first. Then someone gasped. A mother clutched her daughter's shoulders. A high school volunteer peeked around the corner and froze. "Is there a problem?" Thomas asked, voice even but quiet. "We received a report of someone breaking in through the service door," the shorter cop said. "You match the description." "I have my keycard." Thomas reached slowly toward his belt, but before he could touch the lanyard, the taller officer lunged forward and shoved him against the wall. "You resisting?" he snapped. "I'm not," Thomas tried to explain, but his words were drowned by the click of cuffs and the rising murmur of onlookers. Phones emerged from pockets. Fingers began tapping record. Valerie ran down the hall, shouting, "What the hell are you doing? That's Mr. Elridge. He works here." But it was too late. The police dragged him out through the main doors. The kids stopped reading. The volunteers stopped shelving. The janitor, the quiet man who polished floors and fixed broken chairs, was pulled away like a criminal. No one spoke for a long time after. That night, the video went viral. It wasn't just the image of a humble old man being shoved into a squad car. It was the look on his face. Calm, controlled, almost resigned, as if this wasn't the first time the world had looked at his skin and assumed the worst. But beneath the silence in his eyes was something else, something unspoken, burning and buried. By morning, every local news station had picked it up. Channel 8 was the first to knock on his door. He didn't answer, but his neighbor did. "Thomas?" the man said. "You mean Sergeant Elridge? Man saved 3 of us in Fallujah. Carried me on his back when my legs were gone. He don't talk about it much, though." Within hours, the headlines changed. From library custodian to war hero, the hidden life of Thomas Elridge. Man arrested at library turns out to be decorated veteran. Community demands apology after shocking police misstep. The silence around Thomas Elridge shattered. The Department of Defense confirmed his record: 22 years of service, 2 tours in Iraq, a Silver Star, and a Purple Heart. His personnel file read like the stuff of legend. He had been captured and escaped, built refugee clinics, trained young soldiers. And now he mopped the floors of a suburban library, quiet and unseen. The police department issued a formal apology. The officers were placed on temporary suspension. But for Thomas, no public statement could scrub away the humiliation of that day. He didn't return to work for a week. When he did, he walked through the same doors with his same keys and same faded uniform. Only now, the mural on the lobby wall had changed. It used to show children reading books under a tree. Now, it showed a figure standing tall beneath a waving American flag, mop in one hand, medal in the other. The morning he returned, it was raining again. Same gray skies, same chill in the air. But this time, there were reporters parked across the street, and library staff were already peeking out the windows before his shift even began. Valerie met him at the door, her eyes glassy, her voice tight. "We're so sorry," she whispered. Thomas nodded. "Don't be. Wasn't you." She handed him a small envelope. "The city wants to do a formal recognition. Ceremony. Medals. Speeches. You deserve it." He looked at the envelope, didn't open it. "I came to wax floors, not to wear ribbons." But the ribbons had already been dusted off. That afternoon, Mayor Watkins held a press conference on the library lawn. Microphones lined the podium. Kids held cardboard signs with Thomas's name on them, drawn in crayon with shaky stars and tiny American flags. The mayor called him a living example of dignity under fire. The chief of police called it a tragic misunderstanding. The crowd clapped. Cameras flashed. Thomas stood off to the side, hands behind his back, eyes scanning the horizon like he was waiting for a chopper. Not applause. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't approach the podium. He simply took one step forward. "You want to thank me?" he said, voice even. "Then teach your sons not to grab men like me by the neck without asking who we are. Teach your daughters that a mop doesn't mean less than a badge." Then he walked back inside. There were cheers, yes, and the video was shared across the country. But not everyone clapped. The union rep from the police department filed a complaint about public disrespect. One of the officers who cuffed him sent an apology email. Another didn't. But the community changed. Kids started greeting him by name. "Hey, Mr. Elridge," became a common sound in the hallway. Some parents brought him meals. A high school senior did her capstone project on his military service. Local veterans invited him to speak at the VFW hall. He always declined. At home, Thomas kept to himself. His apartment was sparse, neat, every object in its place. His medals were still in a shoebox under the bed. But the letter, the one from Washington, DC, that one he read again and again. It was from an old commander. "Heard what happened?" It began. "Told the Pentagon you were the bravest bastard I ever saw. Hope to hell you're okay." Bravery. What did that even mean anymore? He remembered crawling through sand so hot it peeled skin off your knuckles. He remembered pulling a 19-year-old out of a burning Humvee. He remembered lying in a ditch with shrapnel in his thigh, whispering Psalm 91 into the blood-soaked dirt. And yet what stung the most wasn't war. It was the way that cop looked at him, like he'd already decided Thomas's story before Thomas could speak it. A week later, Valerie came into the break room while Thomas was sipping lukewarm coffee. "They're holding a city council vote," she said. "Want to name the library wing after you. You okay with that?" He blinked. "A nameplate don't scrub old pain away." She nodded. "Maybe not. But sometimes it keeps the next pain from happening." He didn't answer right away. His eyes drifted to the TV mounted on the wall, muted with captions. The news was showing another story. A black teenager tackled by security for matching a suspect's profile. Different city. Same script. "Pain never stops," he muttered. Valerie sat beside him. "Maybe not. But you made them look. You made them feel it." He sipped his coffee again. "That wasn't my goal." "Maybe not. But it happened anyway." The next week, the police department reached out. They wanted to invite Thomas to speak at their annual cultural awareness training. "Offer insight," they said. "Bridge gaps." He stared at the email for 20 minutes before replying. "I'll come. But not to make you feel comfortable. The day of the meeting, he wore the same uniform he cleaned in. No medals, no fanfare, just his ID badge and a folder with handwritten notes. They gathered in a sterile conference room, the walls plastered with motivational posters. Integrity means doing the right thing when no one is looking. How ironic. Thomas stood at the front, facing a room full of uniforms. You saw a black man near a service door, he began. You assumed threat. Not worker, not veteran, not father, just threat. Someone in the back shifted uncomfortably. He continued, I have killed men. I have buried friends. I have seen things that keep me up at night 30 years later. But nothing prepared me for the humiliation of being treated like garbage in the town I cleaned for, the country I bled for. A hand went up. Young officer, probably fresh from the academy. Sir, the young man said, how do we stop doing that? The assuming. Thomas paused, looked straight at him. You start by stopping yourself from being the hero in your own head. The room went quiet. The only sound was the buzz of the fluorescent lights above. Every man you meet is not a threat. Every woman you pull over is not a lie. Every skin color is not a story you get to finish before it starts. Someone clapped, awkwardly. Then another. Eventually, a few stood. But Thomas didn't stay to bask in it. He walked out the way he came. In the months that followed, the memory of the arrest faded from headlines, but not from Crestwood. A mural of Thomas was painted on the back wall of the library, a silhouette of him pushing a mop beneath a cascade of stars and stripes. It became a selfie spot, a field trip destination. But Thomas stayed the same. Quiet. Working. Always early. Never needing a stage. Until one day, a boy named Jamal, 9 years old, braces, curious eyes, came up to him and asked the question that finally made Thomas smile. Mr. Elridge, did it hurt? When they put the handcuffs on you? Thomas kneeled down beside him. It hurt more that they didn't ask who I was first. Jamal nodded, thoughtful. Maybe one day I'll be a janitor too, or a soldier, or maybe both. Thomas chuckled, patting his shoulder. Whatever you be kind. That's what matters. That night, as the library lights dimmed and Thomas locked the front doors, he stood for a moment on the steps, listened to the breeze, watched the moon rise over Crestwood. He thought of Fallujah, of fire, of loss, of chains, of freedom, of forgiveness. And in that silence, he finally said something aloud to no one, to everyone. I'm still standing. The fall came slowly that year, draping Crestwood in amber leaves and long shadows. For Thomas Elridge, it brought an unusual quiet. The buzz around his story had mostly faded. People no longer whispered when he passed, no longer gawked or tried to sneak photos. And for that, he was grateful. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. In the stillness of early mornings, before the first patron stepped through the library doors, Thomas found himself watching the front window, as if expecting something or someone. He couldn't quite name the feeling. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It was weight. The kind of weight a man carries not on his shoulders, but in his bones. Then came the envelope. It arrived without a return address. Inside, a grainy, decades-old photo, black and white, creased down the middle. It showed a young Thomas in uniform, standing beside a row of fellow soldiers. Some were smiling, some weren't. On the back, written in blue ink, they never told the whole story. You should. There was no name. He stared at the photo for a long time, then tucked it into his wallet. That night he couldn't sleep. Memories came in jagged flashes. The desert sun, the blare of mortar fire, the cold silence of a tent after someone doesn't return. But also laughter. Stories told over MREs. The moment a scared 19-year-old named Salazar confessed, he was more afraid of public speaking than of bullets. Thomas had laughed so hard he cried. And now? Now they were ghosts. Except Thomas. He was still here, still standing. And for the first time in a long time, he wondered what he was standing for. The next morning, he asked Valerie if the library ever hosted veterans talks. She blinked. Sometimes. Why? I want to start one, he said. Monthly. No speeches. Just space. For talking. She nodded slowly. We'll call it the Elridge Circle. He didn't argue. Didn't correct her. Just nodded. The first meeting had 5 people. 3 old vets, 1 young woman recently discharged from the Navy, and a teenage boy who said he just wanted to understand his grandfather better. They sat in folding chairs in the nonfiction section, surrounded by books they'd never open. First, no one spoke. Then Thomas cleared his throat. I wasn't always proud of the uniform, he said. Not because of what I did in it, but because of how they looked at me when I wore it. Like it didn't belong on me. The others looked up. He continued. First time I came back from deployment, I went to a diner in Georgia. Still had sand in my boots. I sat down, ordered eggs. Waitress told me the colored counter was closed. I still had my army patch on. The room was silent. The young woman Janelle spoke next. When I told my commanding officer I was pregnant, he told me I'd ruined my career. Like my body was no longer government property. So I was worthless. A chuckle broke the tension. One of the older men nodded. We all got stories. Only difference now is people are listening. And they were. By the 3rd month, the circle had tripled in size. Stories spilled out like rainwater, raw, painful, sometimes laced with humor that only survivors could understand. Thomas didn't lead. He listened. Occasionally, he shared. More often, he let others fill the air. But outside that circle, things were shifting again. Crestwood had a new police chief, Captain Rory Bennett. Younger, reform-minded, eager to build bridges. He requested a meeting with Thomas. They sat across from each other at a small cafe near City Hall. Bennett wore civilian clothes, but his posture screamed, "Cop. I want to partner with the library," he said. "Bring officers to the Elridge Circle. Build empathy. Learn." Thomas stirred his coffee. "You sure your officers are ready to hear how they're seen?" Bennett hesitated. "They need to be." Thomas tapped his fingers on the table, considering. "One condition," he said. "They don't wear the badge when they come in. They wear silence." Bennett smiled. "Deal." The following month, 2 officers joined the circle. They didn't speak, just sat, listening, as Thomas told a story about burying a friend whose body came home in pieces, about how that friend, Marcus, had wanted to be a poet, about how he'd carried a notebook in his vest pocket even on patrol. "I still have it," Thomas said, "pages soaked with blood. But the words, they survived." He pulled the tiny notebook from his coat pocket, held it up. He wrote this one night before we went out. "If they see me only in uniform, I hope they know I dreamed in color." Silence wrapped around the room like a blanket. One of the officers, Officer Medina, looked down, jaw clenched. After the meeting, he approached Thomas quietly. "My brother was in Iraq," he said. "Didn't make it. I never heard stories like that from anyone who made it back." Thomas nodded. "Sometimes the ones who made it back didn't really come back at all." Medina looked him in the eye. "I won't forget what you said," then walked out. Thomas didn't smile, but something in his chest loosened. That night, he visited the War Memorial downtown. It was a quiet park, rarely visited, with stone plaques and brass names. He knelt before the panel that read Elridge, Marcus J., and placed a folded page from the notebook beneath it. "Still dreaming in color, brother," he whispered. But Crestwood wasn't done testing him. 2 weeks later, during a late shift, Thomas heard raised voices near the back exit. A security guard had confronted a young black man, barely 20, claiming he looked like someone banned for shoplifting at the local pharmacy. Thomas watched from down the hall. The young man's hands were raised. His voice trembled. "I didn't steal nothing, man. I just came to print my resume." The guard's voice was clipped, aggressive. "Then you won't mind waiting while we check your ID." Thomas approached, slow but firm. "That won't be necessary," he said. The guard turned. "This doesn't concern you." "It does," Thomas said evenly. "He's a guest. You treat guests with dignity." The young man turned to Thomas, wide-eyed. "You work here?" Thomas nodded. Yeah. And I've been exactly where you are. Security backed off. The man left, shaken but not cuffed. The next day, Thomas filed a formal complaint against the guard. Some staff said he overreacted. Some applauded. Valerie backed him up. I'm tired of the library being a place where only some people feel safe, she told the city board. That week, the library updated its bias training protocols. Thomas was asked to help revise them. He agreed on one condition: no more hiring people who can't tell the difference between protection and control. Crestwood was changing. Not all at once. Not perfectly. But enough. One morning, as Thomas was polishing the entryway glass, he noticed a familiar face approaching, the taller officer from the arrest, the one who hadn't apologized. He stopped just outside, hands in pockets, eyes heavy. Thomas opened the door, said nothing. The man spoke first. I came to say I was wrong. Thomas waited. I saw you that day. Just saw a black man by a door and reacted. Thomas didn't flinch. That's exactly what you did. The man nodded. I lost a lot of sleep over that. I still do. Thomas folded the rag in his hand. Good. The man blinked. Good. If you're gonna live with it, Thomas said, then live with it. Let it teach you something. Then teach someone else. A pause. Then, unexpectedly, the man extended a hand. Thomas looked at it for a moment, then took it, not as forgiveness, as instruction. He didn't speak as the officer walked away. Instead, he turned back to the glass, kept polishing, because some things only shine when you keep working at them. Winter came early that year. Frost clung to the library windows like fragile scars. The sidewalks were slick. The air bit through coats. But inside, the Elridge Circle continued to grow where veterans, former officers, students, even a few local business owners now sat among the folding chairs, passing around thermoses of weak coffee and strong truths. Thomas came every time, always in uniform, not his military one, but his work clothes. The same janitor's shirt, same ID badge. The message was clear. Dignity didn't need a medal. One night, an old man named Harold took the floor. Navy, Vietnam. Scar across one eye and a voice like a gravel road. I used to think I came home from war broken, Harold rasped. But I was broken before I ever left. It was the lies, the way they told me who I was, and I believed them. Thomas nodded slowly. A lot of us spent our lives cleaning up the mess of what they told us to be. From the back of the room, Jamal, the boy with the braces, raised his hand. He'd come every month since the summer. He was 13 now, a little taller, a little bolder. Mr. Elridge, he asked, what would you say to someone who wants to fix the world but doesn't know where to start? Thomas leaned forward, elbows on knees. Start small, he said. Start where you are. Fix one lie. Protect one truth. Clean one floor. And when no one thanks you, keep going. Jamal smiled, a quiet smile, the kind that comes from feeling safe enough to hope. That night, after everyone had gone, Thomas sat alone in the library. The heaters hummed. Snow drifted outside. He took out Marcus's notebook, again creased and delicate now, edges fraying. He flipped to the last page. It was blank. He reached for a pen and wrote, Today, I told the truth and someone stayed to hear it. That's enough. The next morning brought news. The city wanted to name the entire library building after Thomas Elridge. Not just a wing, not just a plaque. The building. Valerie was practically in tears when she told him. Thomas, she whispered. They want to put your name on the place you cleaned for 20 years. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, I'd rather they remembered the story than the name. But he agreed on one condition, that the building carry both names. The Elridge Marcus Public Library. Because some names are carried in silence. Some stories are shared only in blood. And this one needed both. The dedication was held in early spring. Hundreds came. Kids sat on their parents' shoulders. Reporters packed the streets again. But this time there was no scandal, no shame. Only a crowd gathered to witness a kind of healing. Mayor Watkins spoke. Valerie spoke. Even Captain Bennett spoke. But when Thomas took the mic, the crowd hushed like someone had turned off the sky. He looked out at them, students, veterans, police officers, janitors, mothers, sons, and said, "I was once handcuffed for doing my job, not because I was wrong, but because someone saw me and didn't bother to see me. Some wounds you don't see. Some war never ends." He paused. Let it land. But I'm still standing. And I'm not angry. I'm not bitter. I'm tired. But I'm grateful. Because you stayed. You listened. And listening, that's the beginning of justice. Applause thundered. But Thomas didn't linger. He walked down the steps, past the bronze dedication plate now bolted to the wall. His fingers brushed it once just enough. Later that evening, long after the crowd had dispersed, a woman approached the front doors. She was in her early 40s. Brown skin, deep eyes. She hesitated, then knocked gently on the glass. Thomas had stayed late to finish buffing the floors. He opened the door slowly. "Can I help you?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "I think you already did. My father was Marcus Elridge." Time slowed. Thomas blinked. "You're his daughter. I never knew him. Not really. My mom told me he died a hero. But she didn't tell me you were the one who came home." Thomas's throat tightened. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small photo. "This was the last picture he sent us." Thomas took it in shaking hands. It showed Marcus, laughing, mouth open wide, notebook in hand. She looked past Thomas into the library's glowing interior. "He always said you were the one who kept him sane out there. He called you his compass." Thomas laughed quietly. "He said I was always cleaning something, even dirt we hadn't made yet." She smiled. "I just wanted to thank you for keeping his name alive, for giving him a place." Thomas swallowed hard. "I never stopped carrying him," he whispered. She reached out, took his hand. Neither let go for a long time. That night, when Thomas finally left, the sky was clear. No snow, no rain, just stars. The air smelled like possibility. He walked home slow, past familiar buildings and strangers who now called him Sir. As he turned onto his street, he noticed something different. A group of teenagers gathered on the corner, heads bent over a notepad. One of them read aloud. A poem. A new one. By Jamal. It ended like this. "I used to think heroes wore capes. Now I know they carry keys. They open doors and clean floors, and never ask for praise. They just keep going. And I will too." Thomas didn't interrupt. He just stood there, hand in pocket, heart full. Tomorrow he'd go back to the library, mop the floors, empty the trash, restock paper towels. Same as always, but something had changed. Not just the plaque, not just the programs, not just the building name. The world had changed because someone finally saw him and chose to stay. The end.